Hello, and welcome to the RBC Small Business Live panel. I'm Karen Svensson, Senior Director of Client and Business Strategy, Small Business at RBC. And it's my pleasure to be your host and moderator for today's discussion. Thank you for taking the time to be part of our event. Today we'll be discussing the topic of managing your business growth. Most entrepreneurs aim for growth, but a surge in business presents both opportunities and challenges. The question we'd like to ask is how to manage growth successfully. We will ask our panel of successful business owners and industry experts to share their experiences and best practices on how they achieve success and manage their business growth. Before we begin, I would like to give a special thanks to everyone who submitted questions for today's panel in advance. You provided great questions across all aspects of managing business growth. Your questions have helped shape today's discussion, and we'll do our best to cover as many as possible. Today's discussion will be recorded and released as part of the RBC Sound of Small Business podcast series. To subscribe to the podcasts, search for the Sound of Small Business wherever you download podcasts, or visit rbc.com/Sound of Small Business. Now, I'm delighted to introduce our panel. Our first guest is Becca Perrin, co-founder and co-CEO of Pair, a line of modern home accessories. Becca and her friend Jennifer saw a need in the market for elegant but well-priced home decor accessories, so they took the chance and launched Pair Designs in 2010. Our second guest is Cam Heaps, co-founder of Steam Whistle Brewing, Canada's leading independent craft beer brand. Welcome, Becca and Cam, and thank you for being here with us today. Finally, we have Candice Enman, president of Welch Group Consulting. Candice runs a successful advisory, contract CFO, and mergers and acquisition practice. She enjoys helping business owners think and act strategically in their companies with a focus on assisting owners in managing their growth objectives as well as their exit strategies. Candice, it's great to have you here as our expert. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Karen.
So, let's get started with getting to know our panelists. Becca, can you share with us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure. So my co-founder Jen Kelly and I started Pair in 2011. At the time, we had both been in our own careers, professional careers, for about 10 years, but we had also been friends since we were about 6 years old. So we share a real clear point of view in terms of our aesthetic and our appreciation for design. And we saw a void in the market for home accessories that we wanted for our own homes that had a particular point of view, a clear design point of view, but that had high quality and was accessibly priced. So with that view, we launched Pair. And then 2 years later, fast forward 2 years, we each were going to have our first child and saw that same need existed for children's decor and accessories with that same point of view. So we launched Petit Pair. And since then, Petit Pair, which is our children's decor and lifestyle arm of the business, has been growing exponentially. So about 80% of our business is now done in the US, and we're growing internationally.
Cam, what about you?
Well, my name is Cam Heaps. I started Steam Whistle Brewing back in 1998 with my partners Greg and Greg. And we had been fired out of the beer industry at the time, and that's a whole other story. But we decided to get back in for one reason and one reason only. We were seeing the premium import beer category being dominated by import companies, and beer, quite simply, is best drank in its freshest state. So we got into business to build a brewery that would brew and bring to market a Pilsner with quality second to none, made here in Canada with a group of very passionate, happy Canadian people called the Good Beer Folks.
Great. Taking adversity and turning it around. Love it. Great stories from both. Thank you. Candice, tell us a little bit about you and Welch Group Consulting.
Sure, Karen. Well, my name is Candice, and I'm with Welch Group Consulting. I actually am a chartered professional accountant by trade, and then I didn't want to stay in public practice, so I never thought that partnership route was for me, so I decided to go into industry, where I worked for basically 10 years in CFO type roles. One of those companies was actually a high growth company, which I absolutely loved. So we moved that business from around 5 million to 80 million in 7 years. So I've kind of lived that whole spectrum of growth. And then when I moved to the consulting practice, we started a new service offering called Chairman's View, where we got to work with business owners on their growth strategies and on their exit strategies, really looking at what infrastructure do you need to put in place in your business in order to manage your growth. So I think it's well suited for today's topic.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So we received a lot of questions from small business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs across the country covering different aspects of growing a business. And I'd like to start our discussion with the first question. You started your business, it became more and more successful, it expanded and grew. How did you keep a manageable pace of your business growth? Cam, shall we start with you?
Sure. How do you keep a manageable pace of growth? It's a great question because a lot of people think, oh, geez, I'd love to grow at 100 or 200% if I could. Yeah. The challenge with most startup businesses that are growing at a rate that's unmanageable is they start to cause major fissures or cracks in different departments. Because an organization that's growing at triple digits, the amount of adaptation that's required within that department to handle that growth is very tough. I learned a great lesson from the wonderful folks at Ivy through a quantum shift program, which is really try to identify any cracks today because they're the ones that are going to cripple the organization in a year or two from now. So we spend a lot of time trying to position departments not for today's needs but for tomorrow's, and that's largely what we've done.
Becca, what would your view on managing that growth, especially in those first few years?
Well, I think that aggressive growth is just part and parcel with growing a fast growing and successful brand. I mean, that's really being busy. I don't think that there was a point at which you became too busy. I mean, you're busy from day one and it becomes busy with each successive day and month and year after that. I think that the key is really making sure that with that aggressive and exponential growth, you're not losing sight of what people love about the product and the brand to begin with. So for us, it's paying attention to the quality and the point of view and the whole customer experience with our brand and our products. And that is really what's paramount, and that's what's going to continue the growth. So if we're not focusing on that, and if we allow that to slip or to falter, that's what's really going to prevent any real, true, long-term sustainable growth. So making sure that, I mean, aggressive growth is great and it's fine and we all want it, and I wouldn't be shy of it or afraid of it. I would just be cognizant of the fact that with the growth that you are not undermining the quality and the reasons that you're there to begin with. Because with that, I think that's where it's really risky growth.
Right, the wrong kind. Candice, when you work with companies on a day-to-day basis, what are some of the things that you're helping them to think through strategically about that managing their growth?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, it's really about having that plan in place. I think it's really hard to grow exponentially without a plan, right? You need to start thinking about your sales and marketing efforts and how you're going to manage the business from an operational standpoint. And what about the human capital, the talent that you need to bring into the company? So you need to look at all those pieces and say, how are you going to bring it together? So when we work with clients, we're trying to really understand the risk that may impede them from, implementing that growth strategy and elevating the company, I guess, to that next level so that they don't run into so many hiccups along the way. So it's really about kind of the strategy behind growth and really analyzing the risks that are inherent in the business that would put a brake on that growth pattern.
Candice brought up the idea of workforce and hiring and that growth piece. So I wonder what thoughts and recollections you have about when you were in those early stages of growth, and as you've continued to grow, how you make decisions about what you're both co-founders, what you hold on to manage, and what you delegate and hire other people to be involved in. Any thoughts, Becca, on how that journey?
That's hard. And that's something I think that we still struggle with. I think one of the biggest lessons that we've learned and people share with us, and it's true, in terms of delegating things, no one will do it, or I shouldn't say no one will do it. to your ability, but they may not, and that has to be okay, because
That's just your perception.
But when it's your baby, it's your brand, everything, you've started doing it from day one. So you've done everything. And so releasing some of the control of some of those tasks and roles is critical to allowing you to grow. But it's also something that you have to be okay with things being done, that, as people say, if it's done to 80%, that's got to be good enough, because it's really not worth that 20% extra kind of struggle and stress over. I mean, you really have to be able to delegate and to trust. And we have worked hard to create an amazing team, a tight team of people that feel that they understand why we're all there and the reason that the company exists and what we're here to do. And we're all aligned to that sort of North Star. And if we all understand it and agree on it and understand our role in sort of leading to that North Star, then it's very empowering for people. And we make a conscious effort to empower our team to be able to make decisions. And ultimately, when it comes to product or design, or I would never want to step completely back. I mean, that's why I've started the company, and that's what I love, and that's what I want to be doing day in and day out. But we certainly recognize, as you grow, you have to start relinquishing some of the control and ownership over parts of the business when you find a group of people that are capable and competent and help you grow and really drive it.
And you must also be looking at skill set, right? So there comes a certain point in time where as a business owner, you don't necessarily have all the skill set to run the business. So you need to bring on a team that can do that with you.
One of my biggest learnings has been to ask for a lot of help, because we have a great idea, or we had a great idea, and that idea has founded the company, and it's the product that we create. But we are not experts in supply chain or in operations or in legal or in HR, and there's a million areas that we need advice. So some of the best advice I have received has been to ask for advice and to seek out as many different people to talk to, whether they started a company 10 years ago or whether they're whatever the industry, there's lots that we don't know. And if we're going to grow this business and be smart and strategic and have this company be around for a long time, I want to kind of glean as much information from other people, experts, and appointed. We have our own kind of advisory board now, informal, but it's something that's really, really important to sort of formulate as you grow, because yes, we are not experts by any stretch. So.
Any thoughts from you, Cam? I think Becca's given us
my
a great...
partner, Greg, and I's strategy is very simple. Hire people that are better than us to do each of the roles that need to be done, and then we do what we're good at, which is strategic direction and making sure the Army has what it needs every day to execute.
So you've been deliberate about what you hold on to in terms of...
Yeah, I mean, our job, I hate to use the military references, but they apply very much to business. And the general should be figuring out the plan, and the staff should be executing. And if we get tied up in executing, then we're not making sure the plan is strong. Right. And then the whole thing falls apart. So, I mean, our business is relatively complicated because we handle it from raw material to till the consumer purchase. So there's a lot of different skill sets required, and there's experts in each of those fields. Right. As long as they have the right attitude and they enjoy contributing to making Canada's fine Pilsner, then that's how we get our job done.
Okay. So let's dig a little bit deeper in sort of growth and sort of the ebbs and flows of growth. So let's go to when you're growing really quickly. You're growing really quickly. You both have businesses that have inventory attached to them. So how do you handle those spikes in inventory, the pressures it puts on, whether it's staff, your business, your finances, any sort of insights on how you worked through that demand curve going up so sharply?
Well, every business is a little bit different depending on the sales cycle of the product and also whether it's a spoils, where we are essentially a food product. So because it spoils, it requires an incredible amount of planning. You're trying to predict your sales 6 weeks from now, because that's about how long it takes to make a good batch of beer. So, and if you miss it on the wrong side, then you have a stock out. If you miss it on the other wrong side, then you're going to have to dump product after a few months. So really looking at year-over-year data and following, growth trends to help you try and predict is how we do it. We only have a single brand, so that helps simplify it a little.
Right.
We have many different SKUs.
Watching the numbers.
Yeah. We have a guy named Doctor. He does most of that.
We are more fortunate in that our product does not spoil. And we are largely baby and kids, which is seasonless and timeless. And some of our best-selling SKUs and prints and products have been around since the very beginning. So we're fortunate in that sense that there's not a seasonality to it that's very hard and fast. But on the flip side, we manufacture in India, so we have long production and shipping lead times. So we have to factor that in to our forecasting. And that, coupled with unexpected growth and purchase orders from new customers, big new customers that we maybe didn't anticipate, can cause some challenges. We are erring on the side of I want more than less. I don't ever want to have a situation where we're missing a sale because we don't have the inventory. We've got great turning product, but we will err on the side of caution and having a little bit more because the downside of missing that sale is not some place that we want to be.
No one likes to miss a sale.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Candace, two very different businesses, but wonder if there's other insights from the business owners you work with in terms of managing that growth and having that inventory, being inventory ready.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys really have hit the nail on the head when you're talking about data. There's so much data available now to businesses, right? Really knowing what your lead time is and what your peak demand periods are. And then you had also mentioned having a plan. And I think it really comes back to a plan, and that's what we see. So when we're talking to our clients and they're looking at, how am I going to manage this growth period, it's really about knowing that you have backup suppliers or producers, or you have someone else to go to if you do have that spike in your sales cycle. So how are you going to fill that? We ask them to take a look at their human capital again, right? So do they have access to labor pool on a very short notice? So again, it's putting in a plan well in advance of the sales spiking. A plan and then a backup plan.
Right. Thanks. So let's follow the cycle through a little bit.
Yeah.
And so you've had the surge in business. How do you balance reinvesting in your business and all the different choices around where to reinvest in advertising and new product development, the different elements? How do you think through that to keep the engine of growth going?
For us, I'd say some of the biggest areas of growth and reinvestment is in new products and new categories, and reinvesting in the brand and the evolution of the brand. I mean, we're expanding into new categories all the time, and that's a really big driver for growth for us, is to continue that kind of, to be the go-to brand, not just for bedding or for storage, but to have that whole holistic offering to our customers. So investing in new products and categories is key for us. We have been fortunate, I would say, for our company, for Pear, a lot of our marketing has come very organically and through social media. We are very fortunate in that we are riding that wave of social media, sort of in its ability to drive awareness of the brand and to translate into customers. So it's a huge vehicle for marketing for us, and we have not invested much at all in the way of marketing. It's been much more organic and more driven from our social media platform. So that's another big way that companies invest, and I'd say we've been more on the former than the latter.
Yeah, I mean, most of our capital investment, just due to the nature of our business, is on the capital side. I mean, if we were going to grow 15-20% next year, we need 15-20% more capacity, which means we need about $2.5 million worth of equipment. So that, would be a much greater investment probably than the incremental increase in our sales and marketing budget to go get that 15 to 20%. So that's just the nature of our beer business. I mean, we at Steam Whistle will never contract out. So, I mean, I guess there's some companies where you could just look at getting incremental value where you pay a fee per hectoliter, and then you don't have to invest in that capital.
Right.
But for our strategy, which is to oversee the entire process, growing capacity eats up a lot of our capital.
So a couple of different strategies and thinking processes there around making reinvestment decisions. Any other thoughts or tips?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind is that investment decision is really a growth mindset for an owner, right? And I think it's important for owners to know that your business is in constant evolution. So if you're not reinvesting in your business and trying to keep up with the times, then there's a chance that your business might become obsolete. So having that investment mindset is really important. Where you put your money comes down to your plan again. Like what is your goal? So do you want to go into a new market? Do you want to launch a new product? Is it the capital, requirements of the business? But it's important to continually invest in the business. Take a look at all the new technology that's out there, right? Like it can change your business completely. So it's important to have that growth mindset and to know that investing in your business is an important payoff.
So thanks, Candace. One of the other, and we've touched on it a little bit, but one of the other pieces that we invest in as business owners is employees. So little interested in how you recruit, what do you look for, how do you bring people into your business that can help be part of the team to drive it forward? Cam, why don't we start with you?
Well, we're all about heart. So if you have a good, kind heart, then you can be a good beer folk. Then from there, if you have the right attitude and a love for beer, and then with that, we can fill in pretty much anything else, assuming you have a background in something. Because we really live the mantra of good beer folks. So that's critical for us. We hire and fire for attitude.
Great.
Yeah.
Becca, anything different?
No, I mean it's very simplistic, but we really want nice people around our company. You need to have a good attitude. You need to be a nice person. You need to be really hardworking. Hardworking, willing to just jump in and do a million different things, because I can assure you that the people that have been with our company from the very beginning don't do anything today that looks like what they did when they started. We've done all kinds of different things, and we've chopped and changed, and it's really gratifying to see the people that are still with the company sort of blossom into these new, very senior roles within the company. I'd say also very important is to have an appreciation and an understanding for what we do and a love for what we do. But we also give a lot of autonomy to our staff and our team, because they are critical. I mean, we couldn't do what we do without these people. So we want them to know that they're an important part of the growth, and they're helping. Their piece of it is what's getting us to here. So everyone has to sort of know that their kind of role within the company is so critical.
And Karen, I think another thing that we also see with our clients, because I think attitude and passion, and that's really important when you're hiring, but I think even the type of people that you are hiring, I think a lot of companies when they're first starting out, or they're in their business for 2 to 5 years, they think that they need to hire full-time employees, and that's not necessarily the way. Like the whole contract employee movement, it's really changing how people are engaging with their employees, right? So people can be part-time, they can be freelance. There's whole virtual human resource teams so that they can come in and help you with employee management. There's virtual CFOs that can come in and help you kind of with that strategy and coming up with your forecast and trying to get financing for your business. So I think that's the other thing that small businesses should take into consideration. So you're really looking at who the person is, because I truly do believe that if they have the right attitude, then you can train them to do the role, but also think about the mix of employees that you have. I think that's really important.
So that's interesting, all kinds of different options in terms of how do I think about building this team. Any sort of tips or insights on how do I choose, how do I make a choice between an outsourcing, a part-time person, paying overtime to existing employees, adding net new employees? Any sort of thoughts on how do you chunk through those decisions as a growing business?
So depending on what the role is, like I saw the question on the overtime. So if it's a short-term issue that you're having, then I would say you might want to pay overtime to an employee. But if you see that issue continuing where you really just need to staff up, then you may need someone full-time in your business. I think where some of these virtual contractors really tend to help is when you don't have the internal expertise, but you just don't need that person on a full-time basis. So for example, an external bookkeeper would be a good example of that. I brought up the HR component of that because we have clients who end up in disputes with employees, or they need to, work on their compensation package, or, there's so many issues. They can bring in someone at a fraction of the cost rather than hiring someone full-time or even engaging a lawyer. On the virtual CFO side as well, it really works. You might not have the skill set internally to go out and help get financing or apply for grants or help to build that strategy. And those people are as you need them. So they're not necessarily on your payroll. So you can get highly skilled people at a fraction of the cost of hiring someone full-time or going elsewhere.
We do that. Sorry to interrupt, but we've worked with part-time CFOs in the past, and it's an amazing way to have somebody bringing in that type of skill set, and it's not on a full-time basis. And then similarly in our design, we have a ton of design, and we have lots of interns and young designers coming up the ranks, and that's a particular role that requires a real point of view, and sometimes it's nice to sort of try them out and start on contract and see how it goes. And if they work well, then they might stay on full time. It just provides flexibility and the ability to kind of test people out before making that real commitment to hiring.
Well, and there's a lot of programs where you can get access to labor for free through some of the universities, right, where you're hiring certain graduates to come in for a 6 to 8 week program, and you pay them what you can, if you can, but they're there to get experience in their business. It's a win-win.
Yeah. So some great tips. Thank you both very much. If you're just tuning in, welcome to our discussion. You've joined the RBC Small Business Live panel, and we're discussing the topic of managing your business growth. If you missed part of our discussion, it is recorded and will be released as part of the RBC Sound of Small Business podcast series. To subscribe to the podcast, search for the Sound of Small Business wherever you download podcasts or visit rbc.com/Sound of Small Business. The discussion so far has been great, so thank you for joining us. So far we've talked about growth, we've talked about reinvestment, we've talked a little bit about hiring and recruitment. Now I think we're gonna zero in a little bit on the two of yourselves in terms of there's so many things that you can be doing on any given day. And this is sort of managing yourself. And so how do you, as you're making choices on a daily basis, make sure that you're focused on the right things and letting the team focus on those right things? So any ideas on tips around how do you think through managing yourself as that general leading the charge of the team? Cam?
Well, we're generally people first, so my partner and I spend a lot of time dealing with the staff and dealing with any of their specific issues. Again, making sure they have what they need or they're getting the information they need. As far as prioritizing what to do on a given day, basically if it's critical to moving down the track of the plan you've articulated, then it gets a high priority. So I'm notoriously horrible with email because I'll just skim through them, and if it's not a high priority, then it's probably not that important. That's how we do it.
Becca, other thoughts?
I make a lot of lists, and then I rewrite my lists at the end of each day or the next day because I need to see it, and even if they're little things, I need to see it all sort of written out now. I know the high sort of strategic priorities of the business, which are always sort of paramount in my mind, and as you said, those are the kind of things that I always need to be moving ahead and moving along. I find a lot of my time is now spent with people, like managing people, having meetings, making sure they're able to get what they need done and get my input, and that I'm training them sufficiently so that I need to be involved in that sort of less and less. But I find that the larger we get, the more I am pulled into the operational and management of people. And it's really hard to make sure that I'm really staying true and focused on the stuff that ultimately is why we're all there. But that the time of my day, the chunks of my day, I find definitely evolves, and it evolves.
Well, look, all of our businesses
Well, we're never going to be as
operate because of people.
People. Yep.
Yeah.
Without people, it's a
Yeah.
nice idea on a piece of paper.
Right.
Yeah.
The more people we have, the more times it takes making sure they have what they need and they're getting the
Yeah.
information they need from.
So the people side
Yes.
is an important part to both of your businesses, but before we started, we had an interesting conversation about the strategic plan, which is also a critical role for both of you as leaders of your business. Any, bit of description, I think you had a great sort of plan in terms of how you strategically plan and frame that out. Any sort of tips and insights on the strategic planning role?
Yeah, I mean, the plan is the single most important thing, because you have the plan even before you put the people in place to execute. So your plan is everything. And that plan will change with time, with changes in the company, changes in the industry, changes with consumer demand. And you should have, we always pride ourselves on having a 50-year plan as well as a
5-0.
Yes, 5-0, as well as a 1
plan.
and 5,
Okay.
because we're not building a business to sell. We're building a legacy brand in the beer business, a beer that Canadians can be proud of. And so that plan, as far, coming back to the delegation, if there's anything required on a day-to-day basis that needs to be adjusted to get the company or a certain department or an individual driving towards that plan, that is as high a priority item as you could possibly spend time on.
Right.
And that's what my partner and I spend most of our time doing.
Becca, any other differences or?
No, this is not sort of my idea, but it's certainly something that resonates strongly with us at our company, which is that there is the what that we have, which is our product, which is the product that we design and love. Then there's the how we do it and how we make it and how we get it to people and how we sell it. And then there's the why we do it. And the why we do it is really what drives our overall strategy. Why we're here, why we are here today, and why we're going to be here in 50 years, similar to what you just said. So the why is really what drives all of it, and it really leads the strategic decisions that we have on an annual basis, and even more so. It's really, if you're clear on that, like why you're in existence as a company and what it is, what is the essence of why you all go into work every day, then that really does drive all of those high-level, important, strategic, long-term decisions. Past this quarter, past this financial year, it's with the view to be growing the business for the reason that you started in the first place. So I think having that very clear in your minds, in your team's minds, and having that be the guiding light for your strategic initiatives is really, really important.
There's a great saying that says, if you don't have a strong plan, everything seems like a good opportunity. And it's so true, because the stronger the plan, a good plan really just makes day-to-day decision making simple, easy, and efficient. So because everyone's going the same direction.
Right.
You can waste a lot of time on a day-to-day basis if you're not all going towards the same direction.
And if I can just add to that, this might be a bit off of that question, but I think what's also really important for building a brand and a business is to be true to what it is you are doing, and not so influenced or guided by what the other beer companies are doing or what the other baby brands are doing. It really doesn't actually matter, and it doesn't help you to grow. Being so reactive and reactionary to what's happening is really dangerous, I think.
This is a very important point for any entrepreneurs listening, because a lot of people go, oh, well, how do you get into a market that, it's saturated? Well, every market is saturated. It's 2017, people. Unless you've got some fancy new tech thing, everything's saturated. From baby products to beer, all you have to do is be better than someone else in that market. You're going to get market share. So I couldn't agree more with Becca saying, we've never really dwelled and focused on what the competition's doing or trying to buy competitive data sets which are available for sale, because believe in your strategy and plan and execute.
It's what I heard was also this idea of it's just important what you do as what you don't do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That distraction factor. Candace,
Yeah.
does that resonate in terms of the clients you work with?
It absolutely does. And I was just going to say, I mean, your strategy is really that guiding light that keeps everyone focused and going in the same direction, right? It's to ensure that everyone in your company understands what your vision is and that everyone is aligned to that vision. So, we talked a little bit about accountability of the team and making sure that they own that passion. That's what your strategy does. It keeps you as owners focused on the big picture, so not necessarily down into the weeds of running the business on a daily basis, but actually, keeping yourselves accountable to saying, this is where I want the business to be. I want my business to be here 50 years from now. So what do I need to do to ensure that that's going to happen? And what does that look like? And that's what your strategy is really about.
So we've talked a lot about best practices, tips, things you did, things that are core to your success. Shift the conversation a little bit in terms of whether it's your business or businesses you've seen. What are some of the common mistakes you think that people make as they're looking to grow and putting growth plans in place? Either things that you almost did but didn't, or things that you've seen from other businesses in terms of mistakes as people are trying to grow?
Brand proliferation is the number one killer I see of small business. I mean, it works for Procter & Gamble, but if you're a startup, man, the number of people I see who they come out with 300 products in their first 10 years and they are nothing to nobody when they wake up one morning. They started with a great passion and a great vision, and they let their temptation take them off. Well, they probably didn't have a plan. But we see that all the time.
Becca, any other?
I would probably say having a great idea is obviously the important part, but being able to market it and sell it and have it be competitive and having the price structure, your price structure, work to that pricing structure that works in the market is so key. So I think a lot of there can be a great idea, but not having the pricing model, the cost of the good versus what you're going to be able to sell it for, and having the right margins built in. When we started our company, we started the brand as a wholesale business. So our cost structure was built on that model. So we built in a profit margin that worked selling it to retailers. So we've then, in the last couple of years, added a retail component by selling it on our own website. And we're building our retail business, which is at double the margin. So rather than starting there and trying to work backwards, we tried to be very strategic and very careful that the pricing structure and the margins made sense, because the idea, as everyone knows, is just part of it, but it has to be economical, and the profit has to be there, and it has to be sustainable and growing. So I think that's a key part that people have to really have a very clear handle on. From the cost of production before they start to enter the market and have a real positioning from a pricing structure.
Other thoughts from you, Candace, around those common, well-intentioned, but things that are common mistakes during that growth phase?
So I think because we work with a lot of owners that are focused on the sustainability and the transferability of their companies, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we see with business owners is that they are the do-it-all business owner. So we say that they have that octopus syndrome where they're doing everything. So they really haven't taken the opportunity to build their business, put the right infrastructure in place in their business so that it's not just reliant on them. So for us, we're always telling owners that they do have to, Stephen Covey, you think with the end in mind, right? So you build your business to last decades, but you always have to think about, how you're going to transition it eventually. And there's a myriad of options that are available, but that do-it-all business owner, that impedes your growth.
That's the guy or girl who wasn't good in group projects
Yes.
in school. They third-party help is the best model for them because their businesses will sputter
Yeah.
because they don't.
But we
do
have
well
a
in
lot
group
of really
environments.
successful business owners, and clients that have great businesses. They're $20 million businesses, but they're still so heavily involved that if they weren't there, the company wouldn't operate the same
key man
way.
risk.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. So it's really kind of stepping back and trying to figure out what do you need to put in place in the business in order to allow that growth so that the business is not just relying on you. So we have clients, again, that have built successful businesses. They're riding the high. They're, selling lots of product, but it's all them. So now you have to kind of step back and say, and some clients hate this, but you have to almost make your company more corporate, right? And there's things that you have to follow, but that will ensure that you're able to manage that growth more successfully.
Great tips, thank you. So looking back over the different phases of growth that both your businesses have experienced, any thoughts or things you could share with us around the greatest risk you took to create growth, and would you do it again?
Well, I think the greatest risk any of us probably took is starting our own business. That really is, once you're in it, you're in it. And I'd do it 100 times over. It's been the greatest experience of my life.
In terms of the risks, I
Yeah,
guess.
the risks you
I
take.
I was thinking about that, and we're actually in a sort of in that right now. We started our business in home accessories and decor. And as I mentioned, we've expanded and really grew in the baby and children's world. And we made a very conscious decision several months ago to really expand upon that segment of our business because for so many reasons that I won't bore you with today, but it really makes sense for the business, for us as a company, for our growth strategy. But it was also a decision that came with some risk because the portion of our business, which is really where we started the company, we were preparing to walk away from largely. And that's a big decision, and it's not something that we sort of took lightly. But we really identified that while that is a very successful segment of the business, without a doubt, it didn't compare to the opportunities that were presenting itself on the other side of the business. And if we could all focus our energy and capital and attention and all of our resources into the part of the business that really presented the most opportunity and that were really aligned with where we wanted to go, that the opportunity was limitless. So it was a really conscious but scary decision to walk away from a part of the business consciously that is really where your roots are. And I think that we could have cobbled along and kept it going and kind of moved it along, but it would have been at the detriment of growing the business consciously and effectively. So it's a decision that we have only just recently made and we're in it. Would I make it again? Yes, because it feels like the right decision for the business, but it's a risk. But as you said, starting the company is a risk. Quitting our jobs when I had a baby and then 2 more is a risk. But it has been just the most incredible experience and continues to be, and we love what we do. So the risk, there's way more reward than the risk would ever kind of prevent us from going after.
Candace, any thoughts from you in terms of that, thinking through, is this the right risk? What do I do? What don't I do? Some of that advice that you give to the clients you work with.
Yeah, so I think it's you talked about making lists. I think it's important that people sit back and try to document what does this mean and what could be the possible outcome of the risk. But we usually tell our clients, without risk, there's no reward, right? And I think that's really important. So if you're not willing to take that gamble, then you're static. And I mentioned business evolution a little bit earlier on. So you don't want to sit there and wait for something to happen to your business. So you need to have those big audacious goals, and you need to be thinking about, what risk can I take? They have to be calculated risk. You're not going to go out and spend, all your cash flow on doing something new unless you've looked at that business plan and you've done the forecasting and it really makes sense. But But it's really about trying to dissect that risk and making sure that you're comfortable with it and that you will ultimately see that reward. There's so much change today in all of the businesses, right? And there's so much disruption because of technology. Sometimes you need to be able to take that gamble and change things up in order to remain competitive.
Someone said to us recently, and it resonated with me, that the worst decision you can make is just not making one.
It's no decision.
So just do
Absolutely.
it. It's not going to sink us. I'm pretty sure that none of the decisions we've made, sure, we've made mistakes, but mistakes happen and we move on. We really don't actually dwell on them, and I'd rather just make a decision and do it and execute to it than just sit and wonder about it for 6 months, 12
And sometimes you
months,
take
however
too
long.
long to make decisions, and you go back and you second guess yourself, or you're halfway down and you think you're on the right path, but you're already committed. So you either see it through or reevaluate and pull yourself out, but that's all part of it. You need to be confident in the decisions that you're making at the end of the day.
So I think, you said it yourself that one of the greatest risks is the actual starting of the business. I know we were talking before we started the cameras rolling, and both of you have young children at home. So wondering, in addition, it's a lifestyle, being that business owner, and what are some of the ways, as you've got fast growing families, growing businesses, how do you balance that personal life, work life, business out for both yourself and your partners and those around you?
Well, for me, there's two things. One is I have a very strong wife, and two, my partner and I believe in a life-work balance. So, we don't want to see people working overtime every day. Yeah, when things come up that require some extra effort, everyone's willing to do it, but we don't want that to be a daily thing. So we really promote people enjoying work. We have a very familial feel at work, so we sort of have two families in our lives. And also getting home and enjoying your family.
And you think is that energizing both to yourself and to the people around you?
Man, I get more energy from my kids than I could ever begin to explain. And I get a ton of energy from the people I work with because their passion it's contagious and addictive. So,
Becca, how about you? I know we talked a little bit about the beginning of your business, and it literally was starting a business and starting a family at the same time.
Literally
How is that journey?
No, it was not easy, and it's still not easy. What I'll say is, as you said, with your team members, we're very supportive and encouraging to, you leave early when you have to leave early, and you've got to pick so-and-so up for ballet. Okay, great. That's just the way we work. It's the way Jen and I operate, and it's the way we ensure that the rest of the team is as well. When it comes to managing it myself, I have an amazing husband and an amazing network of people, family that help, because I wouldn't be able to travel and do the things that I do without it. But I also think, which is sort of turning it on its head a bit, I actually think we're doing great things for our kids and showing them what we're doing, because we not only love working, but we're creating a business, and we're showing them that there's nothing that you can't do.
Any other thoughts? That's sort of the balancing. Any other thoughts on, you're running a fast-paced business, you're growing a lot. Any sort of tips on how do you prevent burnout? Or is that, if you haven't got there yet?
Before you get to the burnout is, how do you know if your balance is off? And
how do you know?
If you're not having fun, your balance is off. Because doing what we do with the people we do it should be fun. Yeah, okay, we all going to have a moment here and there once in a while. So the only thing we do more than work, well, I don't think there's anything we do more than work. Right? That's most of our life. You put some sleep and family time and eating in there, I still don't think it's as much as work. So having fun is critical.
It's critical.
Yeah.
Just creates the
So
energy.
if you're not having fun, you need to change your balance, or you need to change your business, or you need to change your career.
Right. Things you see, either yourself, because you're a busy woman yourself in terms of the practice you're running.
See, look at the smile.
Two
She's having
small
fun.
boys.
Yeah.
So I always laugh because I actually find balance really hard, and sometimes I tell people it's almost impossible, right? But for me, it's all about flexibility, and you have to prioritize. So when I had my kids, I just said, I'm leaving work at 5. And I was working for an international company at the time. So I used to tell people I had Europe in the morning, North America in the afternoon, and then my company was Australian, so I had Australia at night. But I left at 5 and I spent my time with my kids, and if I had to go back to work at night, then I would go back to work, because that's just what you do. So for me, it's all about being flexible, and I still do the same thing today. So I go to work early, I pick up my boys from school, and you just make it work. And I truly believe that there's ebbs and flows to everything in life. So sometimes you're going to be really busy, and then other times, you know, I'm going to go sit on a beach and have a pina colada. So
Beer,
it's important to, beer. I'm so sorry. I'm not a beer drinker. I just said that to everyone.
So there's still opportunity for growth.
There you go, Mark. There's your growth opportunity.
But I think it's important, and I think everyone would agree that it takes a community, it takes a village to kind of raise your children and to bring that balance. But I recently did something at the University of Ottawa, and we were talking to some of the graduates. And I think when people talk about balance, they always talk about family, and they talk about work, and they forget about themselves. So I think that's also really important. So as an entrepreneur, I think you have to rejuvenate. I think you need to take time and recharge your own batteries. And whether that is just reading a book or going to the gym, I think that time away is important. So I think there's 3 dimensions to balance that people have to bring in.
That's a good point.
Okay. So thank you. Some great suggestions there in terms of managing yourself and keeping yourself well and able to keep climbing new mountains. The discussion today has been fantastic, and we've learned so much from our panelists and their experiences. To wrap up our conversation, I'd like to ask each panelist to share their final quick tip and advice on how business owners can successfully grow their business and make their someday happen. So, Becca, why don't we start with you? Last quick tip.
I would really say that to not hesitate to ask for lots and lots of help and guidance, because as we mentioned, you have a great idea, but you don't have all of the ideas and answers, and it is so important to be educated and to really not be afraid to ask for help.
Cam, quick.
A quick piece of advice for
Yeah.
business: shoot for the stars.
Love
Think
it.
big and go for it, because it's a lot of fun that way. And if you shoot big, it's amazing. When you set a plan, plans have a strange way of becoming a reality.
Yep, you imagine it, you bring it to life.
Totally.
Yeah.
Candace?
Yeah, so I sound like the really pragmatic one, but I'm going to say have a plan, because without a plan, it's really hard to manage that growth. And then I'm going to say, and really echo Becca, but you need to take risk in your company to grow.
Thank you. That's great advice from all of you. That's all we have time for today. Thank you for tuning in to this RBC Small Business Live panel. We hope that we provided you with some valuable advice and useful tips on how you can expand and manage your business growth successfully. For tips and advice on starting a business, getting your business online, or how you can make the most of your marketing budgets, please visit youtube.com/RBC for more of our small business panel discussions. If you have questions or need further advice, we are always here for you, whether you're a new startup looking to grow or thinking of exiting your business. For advice, please contact an RBC business advisor at your local RBC branch or call us at 1-800-769-2520 and we'll be happy to help you. If you missed parts of our panel discussion, it's been recorded and will be released as part of the RBC Sound of Small Business podcast series. To subscribe to the podcasts, search for the Sound of Small Business wherever you download podcasts or visit rbc.com/Sound of Small Business. Special thanks to our panel members, Becca, Cam, and Candace, for joining us today. I greatly enjoyed our time together. Thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with our viewers. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Our goal is to keep these discussions as relevant to small business owners and those thinking of starting a small business. So we'd love to know what's on your mind. Please let us know what other topics you'd like us to focus on at a future panel discussion by answering a poll that will be posted shortly on our Facebook page. And of course, stay tuned for details of our next RBC Small Business Live panel discussion in May.